His Royal Highness Ambassador Khalid bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, the younger brother of the Crown Prince. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf. Great to be here.
You know, there's some opposition in the Senate and the House to the U.S. support for the Saudis and others in this war in Yemen. I want you to listen to Senator Rand Paul. This is what he told me back in 2016, but he still believes this. Listen to this.
So we supply the Saudis with arms, they create havoc and refugees in Yemen, and then what's the answer? I think we are elevating an arms race in the Middle East, and I don't think it's good for America.
What's your reaction? What's your response to Senator Paul that he wants the U.S. to stop selling arms, basically, to Saudi Arabia?
Well, here's what's happening in Yemen. We have a terrorist militia that is backed by the biggest sponsor of terrorism, backed by Iran. They decided to take over the country. They decided to slaughter their way through to the capital. And they have launched more than 95 ballistic missiles to Saudi Arabia. They have killed Yemeni people. They have threatened our stability and our security and regional stability and security.
So this is really a proxy war that Saudi Arabia is having with Iran.
This is actually, you know, if we look at on a macro level, Iranian activities in the region, we see Iran have established terrorist militia in Lebanon, Hezbollah, in the early 80s. They have bombed the United States Embassy in 1983. They have bombed the Marine barracks in Lebanon. They have assassinated the prime minister. And they have copied that model to Syria. They have, you know, killed 500,000 people in Syria, committed genocide. And they have copied also that model to Iraq. And they have killed 500 American soldiers, injured 1,000. But in Yemen, they're trying to copy also to basically create another Hezbollah in Yemen that will not just threaten our security and Yemeni security, but also regional security.
Because I assume this will be right at the top of the agenda when the Crown Prince meets with President Trump tomorrow. President Trump is considering, for example, ending the U.S. support for the Iran nuclear agreement. What's Saudi Arabia's position on that?
Well, we've been focusing on the weapon of mass destruction, the WMD. What we should really be focusing on is the MD, is the mass destruction that Iran is committing in the region that threatens the regional security and international security. Iran, as I said, have been committing genocides in Syria, have been killing innocent people, have been basically continuing to do this destructive actions with expansionist ideology. We have to work together with our allies in the United States and the international community to push back on that.
But do you think the U.S. should walk away from the Iran nuclear deal that was worked out with other permanent members of the UN Security Council in Germany?
Well, we definitely think that the deal needs to be fixed. And we are basically an autopilot, but heading towards a mountain. And we need to fix the deal now, not to face the consequences later.
Because the Crown Prince says Saudi Arabia doesn't want to develop nuclear weapons, but it would if the Iranians achieved that. Explain your position on that.
Well, we will do whatever it takes to protect our citizens, our people, and our country.
And so you're saying that Iran represents the #1 threat to Saudi Arabia right now?
Iran represents the #1 threat to the region, the #1 threat to the international security. They are continuing to escalate with their activities in the region, and they have currently, as I said, they have launched 95 ballistic missiles into Saudi Arabia, including our capital, and this is unacceptable. So just imagine if there is a terrorist militia in the United States borders launching ballistic missiles to Washington, New York, and Texas. This will be also unacceptable to any American citizen.
So at least for now, Saudi Arabia and your allies will continue to go into Yemen and deal with this crisis.
We will continue to protect our security and our neighbors, no matter what that takes.
Is there any progress being made? Because the humanitarian cost is enormous, as you know.
We are deeply moved with the humanitarian situation in Yemen, and Saudi Arabia have donated to Yemen more than any country in the world. We have initiated the Yemen Comprehensive Humanitarian Operation lately. We have that will help alleviate the situation in Yemen in all Yemeni territories, including the Houthi-controlled territories. But what we see is the root cause behind this humanitarian situation is the Houthis. Let's remember, they started this war. They started moving from their hometown inside the north of Yemen to slaughtering their way through to the capital, taking over our country. We came in to support the government of Yemen, the legitimate government of Yemen, elected by the people, to basically fight all terrorist non-state actors in Yemen, including AQAP and the Houthis.
So unfortunately, right now, no end in sight to this humanitarian, this war, this crisis that's going on.
We will continue, as we are facing our threats, to support the Yemeni people, to alleviate the humanitarian situation. And we will continue to work with our allies to find solutions to Yemen's situation.
Are you satisfied with the support you're getting from the Trump administration?
Let me tell you, we have always been in the negotiation table. The Houthis have been always walking away. They want to remain as a terrorist militia that uses heavy, medium, and heavy weapons and ballistic missiles, and this is unacceptable. And if you look at the latest panel of experts reports in the United Nations, it clearly states that the Houthis are the aggressors in Yemen.
And you're saying these ballistic missiles were provided by the Iranians?
Definitely. Definitely, and it's not just Saudi Arabia saying that. Now you have the United States. Now we have clear evidence that on the Iranian missiles and the UN Security Council.
And are you satisfied with the support you're getting from the Trump administration? Because there's a big meeting. The Crown Prince is going to meet with the president tomorrow.
Well, we will continue to work with our allies in the United States and in the world to increase our economic cooperation, increase our security cooperation, and to basically serve our mutual interests and face our mutual threats.
One final question. Will women have full rights in Saudi Arabia? I know you're making a little progress. They're going to be able to start driving cars, but there's still a long way to go.
Well, let me tell you what's happening in Saudi Arabia. We have currently this long-term strategy in what is called Vision 2030. We have a fascinating change and transformation. We live in a transformation period in Saudi Arabia. We want to reform our economy. We want to modernize our society. We want to empower our youth, including women. And on the women issues, currently in Saudi Arabia, we have more percentage of women in our Shura Council, the equivalent of Congress, than women in Congress. In municipal elections, women are allowed to run and vote, and they have ran, they have voted, they have won seats. Women are allowed to drive. The biggest stock market in the Middle East and Africa, the Saudi stock market, is headed by Saudi women. So, as the Crown Prince said on his interview yesterday, we have, we've done a lot of changes, but we still have a long way to go.
Very long way to go. Well, good luck with that. The women in Saudi Arabia deserve only the best, of course. And we're hoping for that. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us. We'll, of course, have extensive coverage tomorrow of the Crown Prince's meeting with the president of the White House. Thank you very much. More on the breaking news.